King and Rook versus King.
Welcome everybody. I'm Joel Benjamin, and this is Benjamin for Beginners, a series of instructional videos designed for beginning players. This time we will tackle the important skill of checkmating with the rook. That's rook and king against king. And this is a common end of game situation. You will need to be able to do this to win a lot of your games. Now, there are a lot of ways to do the checkmate, but one thing you have to do every time to get it right is your rook and your king must cooperate. They must work together. Unlike the queen checkmate, where you can just move your queen, use your queen to force your opponent's king into the corner, and then bring in your king, it doesn't work that way here. You're going to have to use your rook and king together. Secondly, at various times, you're going to have to use waiting moves to get your opponent's king going where you want it to go. And what that means will become clear when we look at the moves. In this case, we're going to kind of start with a worst case scenario. We're going to put the white king and the rook all the way in the corner, and the black king is running free. So it's going to take a little bit on the longer side to do the checkmate. But still, you get 50 moves to do it. This game is going to go about 20. So even if you do it less than perfectly, you should still be able to get it done before your opponent can claim a draw. All right, so our first move is rook a2. It's not necessarily the only way to do it. And here, we'll have black play king c3. Now, if black, let's say, backs up with king to b4, then white could play rook to c2. And now we see the black king is cut off. Okay, so it has only the B and A files to work with. So you have a chance to get the king to the side. All right, to get the checkmate, like with the queen, you need the king on the side of the board somewhere. And you don't really care if it's on the first rank or the 8th rank or the A or the H files. Any side of the board will do. So king c3, and now rook a3 check in our sample game, king b4. And now is a good moment to bring the king in because we will need that. King c4, and now I'm going here with rook a4 check. Now, despite the last couple of moves, you don't necessarily want to give a lot of checks to do the checkmate. You only check if it's going to help bring the king, the other side's king, to a position where you want it to be. Now here, black king doesn't have to go back. Black could go in king d3, but there again, the king is cut off and has only the first, second, and third rank to work with. So we're still making progress, maybe driving it back to the first rank. So when black goes king b5, or you can go king d5 or king c5, that's fine too. Now, actually, we had this similar position before, except we've moved things up one rank. Now king c5, I could try rook a5 check again, the same kind of method, but I'm going to vary it up a little bit just to show that there's all kinds of different ways to do this. Rook c4 check. Now if black goes with the king to the b file, that's going to make it easy for us because again, he's cut off towards the side. So king d5, and here is a little tip that when your rook is working well, you don't always have to move the rook all the time to try to force the king over. Sometimes you can make nice progress with the king. And so here, going with king to b4. King to e5. Now, let's say black tried a move like king to d6. If he did that, we could do two things. We could try to force him over to this side of the board with rook d4 check, or you can play rook c5 and force him down this way. And it would be similar if he played, let's say, king e6. Although in that case, we would also have the move that we played that I'm going to play in this game after king e5. And that's king to c5. Because with the kings lined up like this, black's king has to give way. Now, if black plays king to e6, I know a lot of players kind of sometimes lose a little time in doing this, which is not the end of the world, with a move like rook d4, and then after king e5, sometimes they get a little bit confused. But in this situation, it's easier to play rook to e4 check, because whichever way the king goes, it's going to be helpful to us in getting the checkmate. If it goes back to d7, then it's running out of room there. If it goes to f5, we can bring the king over, and we're making progress driving that king to the side. So in my main line, I'm going here with king to f5. And here again, we can use that king to come over and take squares away from the black king. In fact, if the king went to the g file, our king could follow him again. Here, black tries king to f6. And now the rook f4 check is very useful. And if black plays king to e7, well, let's check this out, actually, and see how we could mate probably even a little bit faster this way. Now is a good moment for the waiting move. And this often gets a lot of players, especially kids, because they maybe try to force the kings opposing each other and then he runs away. But a better way to do it is to make a waiting move with the rook. Any of these squares will do. We're just waiting for him. And if he goes here and he's lined up, then we have that rook check forcing him back, and that's always a happy situation. And when he goes king e8, there's a couple of ways to do it. I'm actually going to show you a little bit of an advanced tactic here. King d8, kind of for extra credit. Rook d7 check is kind of a cool way to do it. If he goes king c8, king to d6, and now the fastest way to do it, I'm going to show you slightly easier ways to do it later. Rook to d5, king to b8, rook to a5. That's kind of a cool trick. As you get better and better at this, you could use the tricks to do it a little bit faster and then mate. Going to back up to that position with rook to d7 check. If black played king to e8, running to the middle, he would actually get mated sooner. We back up, and we go over to cut him off, and we get him lined up, and he's mated. Now we didn't necessarily we didn't need to use that rook d7 check, that trick when we did that. We could have also played rook h7. We're going to see this tactic again later, because the king does not want to go back to e8. The king goes back to e8, he's lined up, and we have mate with rook h8. So he runs, we run after him. He runs, we run after him. He runs. And finally we get lined up and we mate. Back to our main line. Here black tried king g5. And by the way, if black tries king g6, here we might actually be a little bit better off by playing king to e6. And then when king g5, then go king e5. It takes one move longer, but we actually get to the same position where black, to use a fancy word, is in a little bit of a zugzwang. That means he has to move when he doesn't want to. And in fact, without your opponent having to move when he doesn't want to, you would never be able to checkmate with a rook. If he could just say, I'm not moving, you wouldn't be able to chase him into the corner. But of course, the rules of chess do not allow that, so there's no problem getting it done. So king g5, our main line again, king e5, king g6. Black is struggling whatever he tries to do. And in fact, if he goes to the h file right away, like king h6, then we could cut him off with rook g4. That's always a handy method, just like with the queen, to keep him on the first rank. But again, just to show you, give you more weapons, probably an even quicker way is king f6, and if king h5, again, we have that waiting move, rook e4, and we have mate on the side. So after king g6, rook f1, again, the waiting idea. And that's, for some teachers, this is the main idea they like to show for doing the checkmate. I find that whatever way is most comfortable, whatever kinds of tactics you use, whatever strategy you use to get that king to the side, whatever works for you is fine. In this position, even rook g4 check would work, although black can come to the f file, but here he's going to be forced back this way with a waiting move, and we've seen this kind of mate before. Also, rook f5 pushes the king back that way as well, and that's okay too. But rook f1 uses this method of trying to line up the kings. If black comes king g5, then he's lined up, and we will have rook to g1, forcing him over. So he's trying king g7. We line him up again. Now, if king g6, we have him lined up. We'll see that one in a moment. If king g8, then we can use a couple of methods. King e7, we can get lined up again, or we could even try rook g1 check. Actually, this is slightly faster because if he plays king f8, again, we have that tempo move. King e8 is forced, and then rook to g8 is mate. If he goes into the corner with king h7, the fastest way to do it is to play king to f6. Even though we want the kings lined up here, it's better if we don't line them up, if we let him come to us. If he plays king h6, the kings are lined up, and rook h1 doesn't. If he plays king h8, then king f7, again, kings lined up. And here we could have also played king e7 and rook g1. And king h6. But you see here, this one would take a little bit longer because if once he gets out there, we may have to chase him again. And if he does kind of slip through our grasp like that, the easiest thing to do is just send the rook to the other side. And as he starts running away, then now we come after him. Again, if he comes back, then he's lined up. So he always has to keep running, and we just follow him. Again, don't worry too much about how long it takes, because if you get this down pretty well, you'll definitely be able to do it in a lot less than 50 moves. There's a rule in chess that if 50 moves go by without a capture or a pawn move, either player can claim a draw, and that is only that applies here because there are no pawns and there are no uh, captures to be made unless white gives up the rook, and then the game would be over anyway. Now note that if there happens to be, some other material on the board, if that happens to get captured or a pawn moves somewhere along the way, that starts the count again. So here, rook to g1 check, and we're almost at the end. We're in the home stretch. King f5, king h4, And here we had that situation again. There is a little bit of a repetition in this lesson, but that's just so you really get used to seeing how wherever the king goes, you always have these ideas working for you. Rook down to g8. And if he goes king to h5, we're lined up. Now, by the way, again, rook to g4, check. This kind of way to do it like this, that way works too. Again, whichever way is most comfortable for you. But I think that certainly most kids seem to feel that this is the easiest way with the kings, your king chasing his king. And then at the end, finally, rook h8 mate again. So the bottom line is wherever the king tries to run to, you can always force him to the side, and with proper play, you can get the checkmate. But once again, you have to use your rook and king together. If you just think that that rook is powerful enough to chase that king around by itself, no way it's going to happen. But if they work together and you're patient and you're prepared to use waiting moves to get that other king going where you want it to go, you should be able to get the rook checkmate done every time.